Michelle, we're just getting set up. I'm going to put a link in the chat room just in case you cannot see the document. And we're going to put in fact a couple of them. Okay. Okay, so Yachimo, greetings, I'd say everybody for joining in. So we want to get right back on track. So last week we dealt with so-called Moses Moshe, which is another title of Tahuti, and previously dealing with Ibrahim, Abraham, another corruption of the title of Tahuti and so forth. So this week we want to get into detail about Ausar, Auset, and Heru, specifically the fictional cartoon character Jesus and so forth, and bring some clarity to the information we put forward in the text. So if you look on page 51 in the KUKUU-TUNTUM The Ancestral Jurisdiction, we have a couple of images. So this is Khensu, and we mentioned this a little bit last week, Khensu Nefer Hetep Heru, which is one specific Heru divinity. This is the form, in the form of a man, but in this particular context, this is the face of Tutankhamen when he transitioned. Sometimes they would take the form of the divinity, but put the face of the person who transitioned on the statue of the divinity. So typically in the male form, with the body of a man, head of a man, and so forth, Khensu is shown with the side lock that represents youth and so forth, as well as the braided beard and the head of a man, body of a man, and so forth. But in this context, they put Tutankhamun's face, but that's not the only sculpture. This is just one of them. It's one of the more popular sculptures of Khensu, or Tutankhamun in the form of Khensu. But then you also have Khensu Nefer Hetep Heru. You can know the difference between him and Heru, son of Ausar and Auset, because Heru, son of Ausar and Auset, often either has the red and white crown on, this is from the Papyrus of Ani, or he doesn't have a crown at all. But Khensu, he will be wearing the crescent moon with the full moon inside and so forth. Sometimes he has, a solar representation also, but very often he has the lunar disc, and he can be called Khensu Ya, meaning Khensu of the moon. So that's how you tell the difference, or else you would not, unless you were looking at the inscriptions, if you just saw the iconography, you will see this falcon-headed divinity, then you'll see this falcon-headed divinity. They're dressed the same, they look the same and so forth, have similar headdress or identical headdress as far as the headdress here, but the crown, Khensu is wearing very often the moon. So there's a difference between these two, and this is critical with regard to who this fictional cartoon character Jesus is. These two different divinities that they fuse together information about. So let's get into that. We're going to go up to page Okay, so we're going to page 44. And also, so just in case, like we mentioned before, because of the quarantine, the Zoom platform has let all the users know that because there are so many people using Zoom right now, because people are inside and so forth, if you have more than 3 people on a live, sometimes the video portion will either be slow or it won't show up right away, or it could freeze and so forth because they're just overloaded. But what we've noticed is that even when that happens, eventually it does show up. But even beyond that, in the recordings, the video does show up. It's just when it's happening live, it doesn't show up right away. It may or may not happen like that today. It looks like it's working a little bit better today, because even with the video portion of what I'm looking at right now, it's more clear. Like the past couple of courses or classes, the video portion was kind of blurry with regard to, the camera, but it looks like they're working that out. So, but just in case, we put the links in the chat room. So if you can't see what's on the screen, we'll put the link on the chat in the chat room. So if you don't see it on the screen, you can go directly to the link and see exactly what we're looking at. So this is page 44 of the KUKUU-TUNTUM. So we said the whites and their offspring attempted to force Afur-Kanu-Afur-Kaitnut into the false belief that whites had a special relationship with God by creating a fictional son for God and claiming that this fictional white character was the savior of the world. They attempted to make Afur-Kanu-Afur-Kaitnut believe that our happiness and well-being in life and after death is absolutely dependent on us believing in and worshiping the fictional white character. The whites desire to identify themselves with God through their fictional character, and therefore force Afur-Kanu-Afur-Kaitnut into the false belief that whites and their offspring are divine or have God's blessing no matter what they have done to Afur-Kanu-Afur-Kaitnut. The whites attempted to control every aspect of the lives of Afur-Kanu-Afur-Kaitnut through introducing this fictional character that teaches we should love all of our neighbors. These disordered fictional teachings they attach to their fictional character are designed to make Afur-Kanu-Afur-Kaitnut accept the invasion, destruction, abuse, and control from the whites and their offspring, and view our suffering and their control as divinely ordered from God. They gave the name Jesus, Yeshua, or Jesus to this fictional white character. So of course, Jesus never existed. So first we talk about the name Jesus. Yeshua, Jesus is taken from the name Khensu, which is one of the titles of the god Heru. Now we talked about there are 2 different divinities. There's a Khensu Nefer Hetep Heru, and then there's Heru, son of Ausar and Auset. But that term Khensu, so both of them are Heru divinities. The term Her or Heru means he who is above, but it's also a title for the term for falcon. Like the word falcon is Her or Heru. Of course, the falcon is above, one of the highest flying birds in the world and so forth. So the term Her or Heru meaning sky up above. Heru meaning the being that's in the sky up and above, which is the being that will be in the sky. The highest flying bird would be the falcon. The vulture is also a very high flying bird, but the falcon, the vulture and so forth. So Her meaning up and above. Head also meaning the falcon, the being that's up high above and so forth. That's a title. So Heru, for example, Khensu Nefer Hetep Heru is Khensu, that Heru divinity called Khensu. Heru, son of Ausar and Auset, a different Heru. Mentu Heru, a different Heru divinity. Herakuti, a different Heru divinity. So there are a number of divinities that have that animal totem or Achenebois, which is the falcon. Heru, son of Ausar and Auset, is not the only one. Heru Bedeti, who is Heru Kuti and so forth, the son of Ra and so forth. He's another Heru divinity. Heru Desher, the red Heru, he's the one who operates through the planet Bedeti or Benna or Mars and so forth. He's Ogun in Yoruba, Benna and Akan and so forth. Ogu and Vodun, Ikenga in the Igbo tradition. He's one Heru divinity. Heru, son of Ausar and Auset, is a different Heru divinity. It is not accurate that they're just different forms of one another. You will find in the Medunater, Heru Ntorou man talking about, for example, volume 1, that Heru Bedeti or Heru Behudet is just the form of Heru, the form that Heru takes when he's fighting, you know, Set and his followers, and that's just the Heru of the redoubled fire, and that's totally inaccurate. These are two different deities. Heru, son of Ausar and Auset, as we will see, operates through the planet Yah or Jupiter. Heru Bedeti was Benai and Akan, operates through the planet Benai, so-called Mars, and so forth. One is the son of Ra, one is the, you know, son of Ausar and Auset. Two different divinities, just like Shango and Ogun, or Hevioso and Ogu in Yoruba, and, you know, Vodun, respectively. So Heru is a title, but then Khensu, it is a major name of that Khensu Nefer Hetep Heru. The Khensu is also a title as well. So we break down the meaning because it's specifically relevant to the way the whites and their offspring took bits and pieces of information and fused these two divinities together, as we will see. And this is the information that other people who have written about, you know, Heru, quote unquote, Horus, son of Osiris and Isis, Ausar and Auset, is the prototype for the quote unquote sun god mythology and the prototype for the Jesus character and so forth. But they couldn't give you the proper etymology of the name Jesus or Yeshua, Yesu, and so forth, because they did not know that. And they didn't understand the relationship between Khensu Nefer Hetep Heru, Heru, son of Ausar and Auset, and why they would take the title of Khensu from that Heru divinity to use it for the Jesus character, and, you know, use the life cycle of Heru, son of Ausar and Auset, for the skeleton of the Jesus character's life. But then when they're filling in the skeleton, they have to take instances from the life or the functioning of Khensu Nefer Hetep Heru, the son of Amen and Mut, to fill that in. And we're the ones who brought that information together. So they take bits and pieces, and let's see what they took to piece it together. So Khensu, as the name of this divinity, the son of Amen and Mut, is composed of Ket, which means child, and Ensu, which means royal, divine, king, and king of southern Kamit. Khensu in this context means divine, royal, child. So, and this is information even Egyptologists don't focus on that. So let's look at this real quick. And we're going to put this link in the chat room. And this is just showing images of the actual. So that link is in the chat room, just in case you can't see the screen if it doesn't come up. But this is what we're looking at. Okay. So of course we know about the triad Ausar, Auset, and Heru. Many people know about Ptah, Sekhmet, and Nefer Tum. You know, so they're different triads in ancient Kemet. Kunrimu and Anuket and Satet and Anuket and so forth. In the south, and Abu, so-called Elephantine and so forth. But you have Amen, the great God, the great male, the supreme being. But then Amenet is the great female, the great mother, the supreme being. So you have Amen and Amenet, the great mother and the great father and great mother and so forth. That is Inyame and Inyame Wanakan, Olorun and Olokun and Vodun and Olisa and Mawu and Vodun. I'm sorry, Olorun and Olokun in Yoruba. That's really Amen and Amenet. Lisa and Mawu in Vodun. That is really Amen and Amenet. And you'll even find Lisa in Vodun, and in other parts of central Africa, you have Lisa as the name of the great male divinity. Olisa is a title of Chukwu in Igbo and so forth. So Olisa and Lisa and so forth across the board. So in reality, Lisa or Lisa is the great male divinity. Mawu is the great mother in Vodun. So you have Amen and Amenet. But you also have a triad structure where you have Amen, the great God, Then the great mother divinity Mut, who also governs the great oceans and so forth. The word Mut means mother. The word Mut also means oceans. So Mut can also mean death as well, but Mut meaning great mother, mother itself, and even the English term mother or moter, and so forth comes from Mut, great mother and so forth. This is her. Sometimes she takes the form of the head, has the head of a lioness, but this is Mut, the great mother and so forth. And then you have Amen, Mut, and Khensu. That's a triad dealing with a specific aspect of creation. The great hidden father divinity, the great Mut, meaning the great mother who gives birth to Khensu. There's a great mother who gives birth to Khensu, the son of the great hidden God. Khensu, Yeshua is the son of the supreme being. This is where you get the quote unquote son of God thing from. The great hidden one, the great hidden divinity, is the father of the son who's born into the world, whose name is Khensu. So when we talk about Ausar, Auset, and Heru, a different triad, yeah, Heru is the son of Ausar and Auset, and Ausar is a divinity as well. But when they're talking about in the Bible, the supreme being is the father of the son. In this context, they stole that from Amen, Mut, and Khensu. Now, and so you see, her different forms here. That's from the relief of Ramesu IV, showing her in her human form, and the head of a lioness. Now you have Khensu. Sometimes he can take the form of a falcon. Sometimes we showed the image of him with the lunar disc. This is the lunar disc and so forth. But in form of the falcon, he has the solar disc and the two plumes, just like the two plumes of Amen, and the serpent surmounting the solar disc and so forth. This is the fiery form, Khensu Ra and so forth. It's one of his titles. But here he takes the form of a male with the side lock of youth, the young, meaning young or child and so forth, but the youth, and then of course the braided beard, and the symbols of rulership. But he has the lunar disc. That's key. And to contrast, you have, now this is Amenet, the great mother. And as a matter of fact, let me just see, there's one particular image I just thought about showing you. Let's see if I can find it real quick. There's one particular one that has actually Amen and Amenet and Mut sitting together. So we just wanted to see if we could find that real quick. If not, I can post it. But that it's actually a portion of an image that we've used on a number of occasions on the website and in some books. Okay, let me see. Okay, so actually this image right here, this is Amen, this is Amen, but then right behind them is Mut. So I'll find that a little bit later, but just so you can see it. But let's get to, if you look in the chat room, we put this link for the Hieroglyphic Dictionary in there. So as you can see, Shet is the circular symbol for the kus sound, and the two reeds for the I sound and the E sound. And you see it means boy, child, babe, youth, and in Coptic it says Shet. This symbol is the SH sound, so the KH can also be pronounced Ka or Cha or Sha. Just like CH in English can be Ka, Cha, or Sha. So you have Charlotte or chagrin or chrome or check, Ka, Cha, and Sha. Same thing in ancient Khanate Kamit. The Ka sound can be Ki or Chi or Shi. And in this context, this Coptic symbol is the Sha sound version. So that's She, boy, child, babe, youth, She. And then you also have She once again in the Book of Coming Forth by Day, babe, in other words, the rising sun. And you see the child with his is the babe of the rising sun. You see the child with his finger in his mouth and so forth. So the sun rising, the sun, the child. So S-U-N, rising, but the S-O-N, the sun, rising, the babe, the youth, the boy. So that's Shank. And then you have, and we're going to shrink that down. And here is page 389. Actually, we need to go over a couple. Let's see. Okay, there it is. So this is the term, they'll write it as Nesu, as Insu, Insu. King of Upper Kemet. Transcribed in cuneiform by NC, and represents the title. So they're just talking about some references, but Insu, King of Upper Kemet, but also king in general. And you'll see the falcon as the determinative symbol. So you have the N sound, the wavy line, and so forth. The S, but then you have the sedge plant, which is the Nsu, Nsu. So you have, but you also have the falcon on the standard with the red and white crown united. And this one you have the falcon on the standard with the white crown and so forth as the determinative. Here, the determinative for Ain't Suit. These are just various spellings of the term Ain't Suit. Ain't Suit, the determinative of a shrouded male figure with the beard, representing a divinity. Sometimes there's no determinative. Sometimes it's just the sedge plant with the T, Ain't Suit. The determinative of the falcon with the red and the white crown, the united crown of Upper and Lower Kemet, Southern and Northern Kemet and so forth. Sometimes just the white crown. Because when they say King of Southern Kemet, That is, the origin of Kemet comes from the south. So if you're the king of the south, the home and the hearth, the south, that's, you know, the source, the root. And even the term soup, dealing with south or southern, that's the root. So the king of Upper Kemet, and then later they took over Northern Kemet, united the two lands and so forth, originally coming from the south in Khanit, Nubia, and uniting Nubia, Khanit, and Kemet as the south and the north, and then the southern Kemet and northern Kemet. So that two lands is a dual meaning. It's Nubia and Egypt, or Khanit and Kemet, but also southern and northern Kemet. So king of Upper Kemet, also king in general, Ain Sut. And then Ain Sut, or Ain Sweet, meaning queen. And then Ain Sut Bati, meaning the southern and northern. So this is why we say that. And then when we look at the okay. Then we get back to the actual name of the divinity, and then you can see how it's put together, but we're going to show cosmologically why that's the case. Now you can see Khensu, the moon god, as the traveler, and Coptic Khons or Khonsu, Shonsu, Shonsu. So you'll have Khensu, sometimes it's written as Khensu, sometimes it's Khonsu or Khons, Khonsu, Shonsu, Shonsu, Jonsu, and so forth. That's why you have Yeshua, Yehoshua, Yoshua, Yashua, all of that, because in so-called Hebrew, only the consonants are written. So it's the Yod, He, Vav, He, and so forth, with the Shin in the middle, which is the Yahushua, as they would try to say. But Hyunsu in Syriac, you have, instead of Isa like they have in Arabic, they have Iso. So they're putting different vowels in there, but that's because we had different pronunciations. So you'll see Khensu, Khensu Or, meaning the great Khensu, Khensu Pa Ari Secher Waset, the one who forms his plans within the region of Waset, or top head of thieves, arranger of destinies, and so forth. Khensu Pakart, a child of Khensu, and so forth. Different forms of Khensu. Khensu Nefer Hetep. Nefer means beautiful, Hetep means peace or balance, and so forth. It says a god of all learning, a skilled magician, and conqueror of evil spirits. So there's a Khensu, which was corrupted into Yensu or Yeshu or Yeshua in Greek, Yesu or Jesus, and Jesus, and later Khensu and Jesus, and so forth. But a god of all learning, a skilled magician, a conqueror of evil spirits. And we're going to see that a little bit later. So this whole notion of, you know, the birth and death of the sun god and the movement of the sun is one thing. That's Heru, son of Ausar and Auset. But then to fill in the life cycle of the healer who goes around healing people and casting out spirits and teaching parables and wisdom and all of that, they took that from Khensu Nefer Hetep, who is also called Khensu Nefer Hetep Heru. That's the one who, the beautiful one in peace and so forth, you know, the peaceful one, all of that is where they steal that from. So you also have Khensu Ra. You also have Khensu Hunu, which is the moon, when he's operating through the moon, penetrating the moon with his energy at the first quarter. And you see the baby once again, Khensu Hunu, and he's the child once again, the divine child and so forth. And there are different forms of Khensu. He also will send his energy through the star system Sapatet, so-called Sirius or Sothis and so forth. So a number of different forms. And let's see. Okay, so let's get back to the, so you can see Khen means child, Khensu means divine, royal, king, king of southern Kamit, Khensu, the divine royal child. They wanted to focus on that aspect with regard to the child born of the great God, Amen, and the great mother, Mut. And, you know, him being Khensu, the son, the child, we know that Khen means rising sun, the baby and so forth is born of the great God. So that's the sun God or the son of the God at the same time. The sun, the rising sun, but also the son of the great God. So they wanted to focus on that aspect, but then, of course, make the sun white and all of that. So when we put this out in 13,002, so-called 2002, this is the information that others who knew about Ausar, Auset, and Heru, and the life cycle was stolen by the Christians to make up the little Jesus story, but filling it in, they didn't have any information. And they don't know who Khensu is. And Khensu in ancient Chinese Kamit is Ayensu in Akan. Boson, Ayensu, that's the male divinity, and Ayensua is the female divinity. And they're the same, just like we showed the female Khensit or Khensua and so forth in ancient Chinese Kamit. In fact, let's go back to that real quick, just so you can see it. Just like we have the male and female divinity in Akan, you have the male and female divinity in ancient Kamit and Kamit. Okay, and what you see here is Khensit, which is the goddess. So just like you have Ra, you have Ra'et or Ra'it, Ausar, Auset, Amen, Amenet, or Amenit. You have Khensu and Khensit. In Akan, that's Ayensu and Ayensua. Remember, Wa is the feminine suffix in Akan, just like the T is the feminine suffix in Kamit. So Ayensu and Ayensua, these two divinities we still worship, are, you know, possess, communicate in our Akan tradition to this day. Now, okay, so we're going to go back to the KUKUU-TUNTUM. All right, and let me know if you cannot see the image on the screen, just let me know. All right, so we had to lay that out. Now, but Heru, son of Ausar and Auset, now we get back to that Heru divinity, is a spirit force in creation, and we talked a little bit about him already the past couple of weeks when we were talking about Heru and Set and so forth. But spirit force in creation whose energy is operating through the core of the earth and the core of the sun. In your body, Heru's energy operates through your cardiovascular system, whose major organ is the heart. In your spirit, Heru's energy operates through your will. So if you have the core of the earth, so you have the inner core of the earth, inner core, the inner core and so forth, that is Ptah, fashioning, and Sekhmet. But then you have the outer core. And Heru is in the outer core, the core of the earth, core of the sun, that hot core of the, planets, stars, and so forth. He's at the core. In your body, he's at the core, which is the heart, which is the cardiovascular system. The major organ is the heart. So, and then in your spirit, your will is that core, force. So we say the divine energy of the great spirit, Ra, Ra'et, the creator and creatress, divine living energy, fire and light and so forth, vitality, flows throughout all things in creation, all created entities in creation. The God of the Ntorou, Heru, is a spirit force in creation who regulates the flow of this divine energy so that all things in creation can receive their share of this energy of Ra and Ra'et and use it to execute their functions in the world. Heru executes this function as he operates through your heart and cardiovascular system, regulating the flow of blood from the heart to all cells in the body so that all cells can receive the energy they need to execute their functions in the body. So the divine living energy, the fire and light that's coming through the sun. So even if you look at just the fiery energy from the sun traveling 93 million miles to Earth, penetrating the atmosphere, getting inside the Earth and firing things up and so forth. And then we take in a breath, and that fiery energy gets inside of our lungs and inside of our oxygen. And when your heart sends, blood to all cells in the body, oxygen is sent to all cells, and that vital energy is sent to all cells. So that divine living energy, the solar energy itself on a mundane level, the solar energy is like the spiritual energy of Ra, penetrating all of creation. The solar energy on a physical level is penetrating the entire earth and warming up everything and so forth. So you receive that solar energy, you capture it in your lungs, and then it gets into your bloodstream through the heart-lung complex and so forth. Once that energy is captured, then your heart is pumping and it regulates the flow of the energy to all cells in the body. If something happens where there's an emergency situation, there's about to be a car crash, or there's some wild animal that attacks you or lunges at you and so forth, and then your heart starts beating very fast and you're sending a bunch of energy, flooding your system with blood very quickly and so forth. You're flooding yourself with not only blood but also fiery energy, oxygen, life force energy for that fight or flight capacity. But then when things cool down, your heart starts beating back normal again, and then there's a regulated flow of energy going back. The heart is regulating the flow of blood, regulating the flow of energy through oxygen to every cell in the body. So the heart is the little king, the core, sitting in the midst of the nation and so forth, regulating the flow of energy to every citizen or inhabitant within the nation and so forth. Your heart is regulating the flow. Your heart doesn't create the divine living energy that comes from outside and comes inside, but once it's captured, then there's a responsibility of the heart to regulate its flow to every cell in the body. It's the responsibility of the Ohini, the king, to receive that energy of the Abosom and Nanonoman Samanfo and so forth, and regulate that energy to everybody in the Oman and the nation. The heart does that, regulating the flow of blood from the heart to all cells in the body. Heru executes the same function as he operates through your will, regulating your energy, your actions towards various behaviors that will allow you to execute your function in the world. So you have the will to do what's in harmony with divine order. There are a number of things that you could do, but you have a natural inclination to execute the function you came into the world to execute, not being drawn into criminal activity, lustful activity, self-destructive activity, or even activities that are not particularly self-destructive, but things that you're not naturally inclined towards. If you're naturally inclined towards agriculture because you're a child of the divinity Amen and Mut, who has to do with agriculture and fertility of the land and so forth, you have a natural inclination to work with the land to make the crops fertile so we can feed the entire mind, and you neglect that and you start trying to work on, being a metal worker and so forth, then you're abdicating your responsibility and you're trying to do something else. And then that creates some, disorder in the nation. You need to harmonize with the divinity that governs your own head so you can use the energy that you were given to bring that energy into the communal sphere to balance out the energy within the sphere so everybody has what they need. So even if you're doing something that's not harmless, but out of harmony with your function, is still creating some discordance. So you can do a number of different things, but when you align with Heru, the force in the heart, regulating the flow of energy, in the spiritual heart, the spiritual heart, he regulates the flow of energy, directing you towards specific actions. That's the will regulating the flow of energy, just like the heart regulates the flow of blood. The will regulates the flow of energy towards actions or behaviors that are in harmony with your divine function, not actions or behaviors that will create disorder in the world. So that's key. Because why else are you here in the world? If you're not going to execute your divine function, you're just going to create disorder in the world. So Heru is there to lead your actions towards the proper thoughts, intentions, and eventually lead your actions that are in harmony with your thoughts and intentions that should be in harmony with divine order. So we say Heru executes the same function as he operates through the core of the sun, regulating the flow of solar energy from the sun to the planets of the solar system so that the planets can receive the energy they need to execute their functions in the solar system. Heru executes the same function as he operates through the solar energy at the core of Earth, regulating the flow of energy from the core towards the surface of Earth so that the water, sky, plants, animals, minerals, and humans, Afro-Kaini humans, of course, can receive this energy and use it to execute their functions in nature. So whether it's in the heart, the core of the sun, in the heart, within your will, core of the earth, and so forth, on every level, he's regulating the flow of energy in a harmonious way. He operates through every level of creation. So we say he is the spirit force in creation that takes the energy of the great spirit, Ra and Ra'et, and regulates its flow to us all. Ra and Ra'et give us life and vitality and the capacity to function and so forth, but it has to be regulated according to our nature. Okay, make sure that you have your sound muted so there's no feedback. All right. Now, the knowledge of this Ntorou, this God, this powerful spirit in nature, operating through the core of the earth, the core of the sun, and with regard to the planets, his planetary home is Heru Sheta-Tawi, which is also Seba Rest, meaning the southern Seba, the southern star, which is so-called Jupiter. That's his planetary home, the largest planet, the king of the planets and so forth. But within the solar system itself, he's at the core of the sun. So, this knowledge of this spirit force in creation, operating within the core of the sun, the earth, heart, spiritual heart, all of that was corrupted by the whites and their offspring, applied to their fictional white character Jesus, who they made to be a white male, God's only begotten son, who is directly related to white people and teaches us to love whites, our enemies, as we love ourselves. Now, we talked about the term, the root of the name Heru is Her or Heri in the language of Kamit. Heri means chief, king, he who is above, leader. This is one of the reasons why Heru has the title Heri or king. The sun also has the title as it is the Heri or king of the solar system, the chief, the king, and so forth. Your heart is the Heri or the king in your body. From the, the earthly portion, you have the heavenly portion up here, which is the head, the gateway is the neck, and the earthly portion is here, and that king within the earthly portion is the heart. It is the Heri, the chief, quote unquote, king, and so forth. And you also have Herit, the queen mother, and you have Het Heru associated with that. So Heru is the king. The sun is the Heri, the king of the solar system. Your heart is the Heri, the king in your body. Your will is your Heri, the king of your actions. The core of the earth is the Heri, or the king of the planet in that regard. So your heart, your will, the core of the earth, the core of the sun are also hidden from view. And the divine energy they regulate is invisible or hidden. The term seshta in the language of Kamit means that which is hidden, secret, or sacred. This is why Heru also has the title Heri Seshta, which means the king or chief Heri of that which is hidden, secret, or sacred. This title Heri Seshta was also given to some priests and priestesses in Kamit. So let's go back to the link in the chat room. You will find the so-called Hieroglyphic Dictionary. And let's pull this up. And this is key once again, because there has been some misinformation regarding the etymology of the term Christ and so forth. And a lot of people reading Gerald Massey have misinformation regarding that. So first we're going to look at the term. So you have the term Heri. You see the face with the two ears facing forward and so forth, two ears and so forth, the face with the head in the sky, the head, Heri, even the term head in English, one who's the head, or someone who is heady, they think a lot, they're all in their head and so forth. Heri, her, or Heri. Her is the term, Heri, it's like headish and so forth, but Heri. Okay, so chief, chieftain, master, captain, president, governor, overseer, superior, he who has chief charge, control, or authority, chief of the two heavens and all of that. So Heri, he who is above, chief, king, and all of that. Herit, mistress, chieftainess, goddess. You have that as a title, Heru, and other female divinities as well. So chief, king, he who is above, all of that. Now let's shrink that down a little bit. And that's page 496, just to make sure if you can see that. All right. Go back right quick. Oh, actually, might be one page before that. Okay. So in this, so you have, for example, the term sesh means scribe. So Heti sesh is the chief, and this is the symbol for the heavens, the canopy of the sky and so forth. The Heti sesh, this is the stylus and the palette and the pot, ink pot and so forth for the scribe, the tools of the scribe. But the chief Heti sesh, the chief scribe, chief librarian of the temple, chief scribe of the altar of all the deities. But then you have Heti seshta. And the definition there is confidential advisor, a secretary, trusted counselor, men learned in the most sacred mysteries. And even with regard to that, let me pull up the other piece on archive.org just so you can see it. And I'll put this link in the chat room also. But we need to get these proper definitions, and then we can get into this proper definitions of where the whole Christ thing comes from. This is the link in the chat room. And this is just volume 2 of the Hieroglyphic Dictionary by Budge and so forth. And I just wanted to pull this up. We have it in the book, but we just wanted to see it in the dictionary as well. Now, as you can see, seshata, to hide, to keep secret, to conceal. Causatives of sheta and seshatat, secret, mystery. It is a very real mystery, mysteries of the God of the horizon and so forth. Seshtai, he who is secret, a divine title. So when we go back and see the term Heri Seshta, it's at the bottom of the column on page 494. And then you go to the definition at the top. Confidential advisor, secretary, trusted counselor, men learned in the most sacred mysteries. The chief Heti of those sacred mysteries, Seshta, that is a priest title, priestess title. To corroborate, for example, the term Babalawo in Yoruba, the highest level priest, and so forth. Babalawo is really Baba Niawo. Baba is the father, the great father, and so forth. That's an honorific title, like Baba is for father and Iya is for mother. But Baba is somebody, that's an honorific title. You grow into that to achieve that level of honor. Everybody who's older is not a baba. It can mean father, but it means honored elder, honored, a highest level title. So Baba Ni Awo is the Baba, the great father of the Awo, the mysteries, or that which is hidden, secret, or sacred. Baba Niawo or Baba Lawo is the father of the mysteries. Heri Seshta is the chief, the male chief, because you have Herit, which is a female, but Heri, the male chief, the head or chief of the Seshta, the mysteries, that which is hidden, secret, or sacred, the sacred mysteries. Heri Seshta is the exact same as Baba Lawo, literally, not only in definition, but in office, in priestly office, sacerdotal office, spiritual clerical office, and so forth. Now, going back to the KUKUU-TUNTUM, now, that which is hidden, secret, or sacred. This title, Seshta, was also given to some priests and priestesses in Kamit. It's a priestly title, as we just saw. This title was corrupted by the whites from Heri Seshta, Heri Seshtos, just like you have Ausar, Ausaras, or Osiris, Auset, or SC is written in Coptic, SC, so Isis. Heru becomes Herus. Even Ptah becomes Hephaestos, and so forth. That os at the end is a Greek suffix, a Greek termination. Seshta becomes Seshtos. Heri Seshtos became Heristos, Heristos, Keristos, and eventually in English, over 1,000 years later, Christos becomes Christ. But Heri Seshtos, the title of Heru as the chief of the mysteries and so forth. Heru, the Heri Seshta, which they understood that Khensu is not only a title of Heru, but it's also a title of a different Heru divinity. And we'll see why. Khensu, the Heri Seshta, becomes Khensu, the Heri Seshtos, Heri Shestos, Keristos, 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 and Christ. That's where they steal that from. Now, just to go back one more time to the volume of the Hieroglyphic Dictionary, because this is also critical cosmologically. Many people, for example, you have Dr. Charles Finch utilizing the work of Gerald Massey, and Gerald Massey saying the term Christ comes from karast. And because you see karast used as an origin of the term Christ, people started using the term karast, believing that it means Christ, but it really means mummy. But karast is not the origin of the term Christ, not etymologically and not cosmologically. We just saw the cosmological foundation. We're going to get into showing Heru functioning as a priest that resurrects the dead. So that's the sacred mystery, but resurrecting his father first and foremost. So it's the title etymologically, but it's also the title cosmologically as a cosmological foundation. This idea that karast is the title, this is just born of ignorance by Gerald Massey, and then some of our people repeated that misinformation because it sounded correct or it sounded interesting. But we can't just accept what the whites and our spring say. We need to investigate for ourselves and what the cosmology actually is. Okay, so you can see here, krst, which is the k sound, often, transliterated as a Q, but it's really the k, R, and S. And the whites and our spring will put the E's in there to facilitate pronunciation because they weren't sure about the vocalization, but krst, some people say karast, to wrap a dead body in cloth and to make it ready for burial. Karast, coffin, mummy, equipment, bier, burial, sepulture, krst, funeral, burial, sepulture, funeral, a happy burial. As you can see in Coptic, kais, which would be karis or karesi, and so forth. So krst or keres, karesi, and so forth. This is funeral, to make the mummy, the coffin, the sarcophagus chamber. Now, those are the different definitions. So to make the mummy, to wrap the mummy, funerary, coffin, sarcophagus, and all of that. And then you also see here kos, which karast becomes kos, and so forth, the way it's pronounced and so forth. You have that in Akan as well. You have a term like oberima becomes obema, with the R is slurred and so forth. You have those different variations, but karast or krst, meaning to make the mummy, wrap, and so forth. And they'll say, well, that's the origin of the term krst or Christ, because Heru and the mummy and all of that. But that's not the origin. This is the origin of the term karast, like crust, also the root of krst, as in crystal, crystallize, to encrust. So when the body becomes hardened through mummification, it becomes encrusted or hardened, karast, crust, and krst or crystal, crystallized. Crystal is crustallized or crystallized, and so forth. So something becomes hardened or crystallized. The body, when the organs are taken out, placed in the so-called canopic jars governed by Khensu Nefer Hetep and Hapin, Amoste, and so forth. And then, which is the Khensu Nefer, the four sons of Heru, Khensu Nefer governing the intestines, and Dwamutef with the stomach, and Amoste governing the liver, and Hap governing the lungs, and so forth. Those organs are taken out. Heart is left in the body, but fluids are drained, mummified, the body dried out, encrusted, and then mummified and becomes crystallized. That is not the Christ. That is the crust or crystallized. It has to do with mummification, quote unquote death. When something dies and the blood leaves it and the life force leaves it, the body becomes hardened and so forth. But the reason why we crystallize or mummify the body and it becomes encrusted or crystallized or hardened is because we turn the body into a large crystal. And we've talked about this in the hoodoo classes and some of the others in the Dubaku course. But what we're doing is turning the body into a large crystal. And once it becomes a large crystal, it's the greatest magnet, the greatest ancestral shrine for the spirit that once inhabited that body. You preserve the body as a crystal, and just like people wear crystals, just like we wear bones and shells and so forth, but also wear crystals. Crystals capture energy, and it can be utilized to purify, to attack, to empower, and so forth. But it's a great magnet. It's a magnet for the spirit of the person who used to dwell in that body. It becomes crystallized, hardened, so it becomes eternal and so forth. And you can always call that spirit back, and they'll take up residence in that shrine that they used to dwell in. Just like people use a sculpture for an ancestral spirit, or nowadays they use a photograph of an ancestral spirit. Back in the day, they paintings or a bust, a granite bust or stone bust or wooden sculpture in ancient Kamit that represented the deceased individual. We would crystallize the body. That's the greatest ancestral shrine. And even in the hoodoo tradition in North America, before we were allowed to go to cemeteries and bury our deceased, in these before cemeteries were integrated and so forth, and our people didn't want to bury our deceased bodies of our loved ones with the white Nile Spring anyway. So we would either have the cemetery in the backyard, a place there, or sometimes we would bury the body up under the floor of the house. We had these homes that didn't have solid floors. They had earthen floors or planks over earthen floors and so forth. We bury the deceased right there up under the house. So we had that crystallized body, you know, right there. We're pouring libation. We're literally connecting directly with the Nsamafo, the ancestresses and ancestors. So that's the purpose of the funerary process, is to crystallize the body or make the body a crystal, so it's the greatest magnet for the ancestral spirit. That's the cosmological foundation. That's why we did that back then. That's why we do that now. Whites and our offspring are unaware of that. And many of our people who read the works of the whites and our offspring are unaware of that. So they don't know that karast, to karast or to crystallize the body, is the reason why it has to do with funerary and sarcophagus and to wrap the mummy and so forth to make it a crystal. And that's the etymological origin of the English term, Indo-European term, krst or crystal and so forth. But it's not Christ at all. When they talk about Christ meaning king and so forth, you know, Heri, he was above chief king, Heri Seshta, Heri Shestos, Heri Shtos, Christos, Christ and so forth. This is why they say Christ means king, but they don't know why it means that, but we do. And why it's associated with Heru, as we can show in the text. And in fact, just to show really quickly, just an image, we have in our Nokwade Sim book, volume 1. No, actually that's volume 2. We'll put this link in the chat room for you, just in case you can't see that. Okay, so this is Akradin Boson, volume 2. We're talking about the deities of the 7 days of the week. In our Khan tradition, of course, Awusi and Akan. This Akan sculpture is Ausar and ancient Kamit, and Essi or Ajwa and Akan is Auset and Kamit. But so this volume is dealing with Awusi and Ajwa, Ausar and Auset. Just wanted to show you that image. So you have a couple of scenes. One of the scenes is Awusi, Ayisi, Ausar lying on the funerary bed as a mummy. Right here, he is the karast, quote unquote, the mummified figure, you know, encrusted and so forth. But here's the Heri Seshtos, or the Heri Seshta Heru, falcon-headed, in the form of the man with the head of the falcon. He is functioning as a Heri Seshta, the chief king Heri of that which is hidden, secret, or sacred, Seshta. And in his priestly function, he's raising his hand and resurrecting his father. His spirit is rising from the quote unquote dead. So the actual Heri Seshtos, or the Heri Seshta being corrupted into Heri Seshtos or Christos or Christ, is raising the krst. So this is not the Christ. This is the Heri Seshta corrupted into the Christ, which is, you know, the Christ and all that is nonsense, but this is the real divinity. So there are two different terms, Heri Seshta and karast. Two different terms, two different functions, two different aspects of the cosmology that the whites and our offspring are not understanding of, specifically with regard to why we mummify the body, why we still do it in the hoodoo tradition today, and juju and voodoo and Wanga and Gangan in North America and so forth. The reason why we do that, reason why it was done back then, and the difference between that and the role of the Heri Seshta in the true sense. One of the roles here. So, and that's why we have to have a class like this to give further insight into the information in the in the book that we couldn't go into everything in the book, but you know, we lay it out, the foundation. So now we can get into, so as the white manufacturers their fictional white savior, they use the names and the titles of the god Heru and the knowledge of the god to create a fictional life story for the new white character. So they wanted us to worship a white character. They made white statues of themselves. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago, but they had to give the statues a name. So they use a title that's similar to the name we're already using. Then they have to give this little white statue a story. Who is this white statue? Why are you saying this is a god? Why should we be following it? Of course, it took them over 1,000 years, close to 2,000 years to get some of our people to fall for that nonsense. But they were going to continue and do it until they got people to fall for it. But they had to give that little white statue a story. So instead of making up a brand new story, they learned about the stories in ancient Kamit regarding the divinities and their interaction in creation. And they co-opted fragments of those stories and attached them to the little white character to make people believe, oh, this is their deity. He's kind of similar to the deities that we already deal with. Maybe he's one we don't know about, and so forth. So the entire story of the Son of God being born of a virgin, who grew up to lead the people, be killed and become resurrected as the savior of the world, was stolen by the whites from the knowledge of the god Heru, his mother the goddess Auset, his father the god Ausar, and his father's brother the god Set. So to give basic information about each one, Ausar is a god in creation whose spirit operates through the star system Sapatit, called Sa. Orion, not Sapatit, I'm sorry, Sa, called Orion. So that's the great quote-unquote hunter, but that's not the hunter, that's Sa, and he's called Ausar Sa when he's operating through that star system. He also operates through the moon. When he's connected to the moon, it's Ausar Ya. He can also operate through the sun, it's Ausar Ra. Also through the moon is Ausar Ya. Energy penetrating the moon and possessing the moon. It's like a spirit can possess you, a deity can possess somebody else. At a ritual drumming is playing, the spirit comes down and possesses somebody, operates through them. Then the spirit can leave that person's body and possess somebody else. The spirit can possess us. They can possess the animal totem. They can possess the plant totem. They can possess the mineral totems, including possessing the sun, possessing the moon, possessing the plant. So when Ausar possesses the moon, he's called Ausar Ya, Ausar operating through the moon. When he's possessing the sun, he's called Ausar Ra because he's working in harmony with Ra, operating through the Aten, the sun. So on the stellar level, Sa, or Orion, energy is penetrating that constellation and utilizing that constellation to send its energy to Earth. On the lunar level, possessing the moon. In your body, energy operates through our pituitary gland, the master gland in the body that regulates the functions of other glands. And the pituitary gland is the master gland, the head of the endocrine system. So we have a chart, just so you can see that. Let me pull that up right quick. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Okay, so we have a chart dealing with the deities in our Khan tradition that govern the 7 days of the week. But these are the very same deities you find in ancient Kandini Kamit. That's what we've written articles on all of them, including 2 of our books. Ausar operating through the sun. He can also operate through the moon and so forth when he's possessing the moon. But Ausar governing the endocrine system, Auset Auset governing the reproductive system, and Bina, who is Heru Behudet, governing the immune system, Abina Sekmet, governing the lymphatic system, Aku is called Nebet Hede Nature Kamet, governing the renal system, Awuku, who's called Set, governing the nervous system, Yao, which is the title of Heru, in ancient Kanedi Kamet, he's called Yao and Akan, cardiovascular system, as we said, Ya, who is Wachet, governing the digestive system, Abba, Nekabet, governing the respiratory system, Afi, who is called Heru, exocrine system, and Amen, Men, governing skeletal system. So as you can see, each one of these major divinities governs one of the 11 major body systems. Ausar is governing the pituitary gland, which is the master gland, and the endocrine system as a whole, but the pituitary gland is the master gland of the body within that endocrine system. Spiritually operating as the masculine aspect of the Ka, the soul. Ausar is thus the force, and the pituitary system is within the head and so forth. So Ausar is the force dwelling within your spirit that is always rooted in what is in harmony with divine order. Ausar is an Ntorou, a God whose spirit has the ability to unify the functions or operations of the various forces in nature. The God Ausar was thus ordered by the Great Spirit to operate on earth, to teach Afura Kanu Afura Kaidu by example how to live in harmony with divine law. So just like the pituitary gland, the master gland sending, follicle stimulating hormone and melanin stimulating hormone and these different hormones, directives to cause, chemical changes within the body, unifying the functions of various organs and glands as the master gland and so forth, and that master system. So does that spirit force in creation regulate the functions of other divinities, just like the pituitary gland regulates the functions of other glands. The glands and organs are the deities within your great body. The abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou are the deities, the gods and goddesses who are children of the great body, the great god and great goddess Amen and Amen. But you have Ausar, the head regulatory divinity that's regulating other divinities. Just like the pituitary gland is regulating other glands. For example, the appendix is a gland, but it's not regulating the heart and other glands. It has a job, a localized job and so forth that affects, different parts of the body, of course, but the pituitary glands, its function is a regulatory function. It's an administrator. So in the same fashion, that spirit force, Ausar Awusi, he's a administrative regulatory divinity that regulates the functions of other deities. Just like your brain tells all the other organs what to do. The other organs are organs, and the brain is an organ, but its role is to tell the other organs what they should be doing, and it has the blueprint for everything. So it regulates the functions of other organs. Ausar is the spirit that regulates the functions of other spirits. Auset is a goddess in creation, Ntorou, goddess in creation whose spirit operates through the star system, Sapatit, which is Sirius, through the moon, when she's operating as Achua or Ajua. She can also operate in harmony with Rayet through the sun. In Akan, she's called Essi and so forth in that context. So the star system, Sapatit, on the lunar level, the moon, through the river waters of earth. And we should have mentioned Ausar operating through the black soil substance of earth, then in the body through your pituitary gland. So he's Orion or Sa, Orion, the moon, black soil substance of earth, in your body, pituitary gland, in your spirit, that aspect of the Ka, the soul, the divine consciousness. Auset on the stellar level, Sapatit, so-called Sirius or Sothis. Lunar level, of course, the moon. On earth, the river waters. In your body, Auset's energy operates through the vagina and uterus structure of the female, the penis and prostate of the male, talking about the uterus and birth canal, that region and so forth. And there's an interplay between Ausar and Auset in those regions. as husband and wife, just like it's an interplay between them in the head region and so forth also. And then it says, we say Auset operates through the feminine aspect of the soul, the kayak. So you have these right and left hemispheres and so forth of the brain, the cerebral cortex, but you also have the pituitary gland, and it has a posterior lobe and an anterior lobe and so forth. And those two lobes of the pituitary gland, Ausar and Auset, are operating up there. But then, you know, in the womb area, you have the vagina and uterus structure, the birth canal, the womb and birth canal. You have the penis and prostate structure. You have Ausar and Auset operating there as well. So when we say Ausar operates through the pituitary, Auset has a role in the pituitary as well, the two lobes. When we say Auset operates through the uterus and birth canal, but also connected to the prostate and penis structure of the male on the feminine aspect, but then you have Ausar who operates in that region as well. So they operate in the head region, heavenly region, but they also operate in the quote unquote earthly region in the reproductive area. Of course, she's a great mother. So Auset is thus the force dwelling in your spirit, within your spirit, that makes you receptive to what is in harmony with divine order. Auset is an Ntorou, the goddess whose spirit has the ability to maintain the unity of functions and operations of the forces in nature. We said Ausar can unify the functions of the forces in nature. Auset can maintain the unity of functions in nature. You have to have the establishment and the perpetuation, the establishment and the continuity. You have the sperm cell that swims across and penetrates the ovum cell, but then the ovum cell collapses around the sperm cell and then perpetuates the life and continues and unfolds and develops, and then that unfolding takes place not in the male body, but in the female body. She perpetuates or continues or unfolds and maintains that unity of functions. The establishment of the unified force happens with the male penetrating the female, and she's a magnet that draws the male and so forth. So that's the establishment. And then when she begins that development, that's the perpetuation. He unifies the functions of and operations of the various forces in nature. She maintains the unity of functions of the various forces in nature, or else you wouldn't have any creation. You have to have expansion and contraction. So now, because she, her spirit has the ability to maintain the unity of functions and operations of the forces in nature. It's like the womb unifies, you know, everything that took place within that zygote and gives birth to the child and so forth. But within the womb, the unification of functions and maintaining that unity of functions so that the cell can go from a tiny cell to a full-grown individual that's birthed into the world and so forth. That's what if the sperm cell penetrated the ovum and then it came right back out? Then nothing would happen. There has to be a unity, the fusion of the sperm and ovum, but then it has to be maintained so that life can develop. And that maintenance is also the gestation and development, unfolding of life. So just like she can gestate and unfold life within the womb, she can give birth to the planet, sun, moon, stars, and everything else. She's the great birth canal, womb and birth canal within the great divine body of Amenet. Just like a woman has a womb and a birth canal, the great mother Amenet has a womb and a birth canal, and that is the shrine of Auset within creation. And then she has a miniature version within the body of the Afro-Kaini woman, and the Afro-Kaini woman only. She only stimulates the womb of the Afro-Kaini woman. So, so she was ordered by the Great Spirit, Ra and Ra'at, to operate on earth and teach Afro-Kaini by example how to maintain their living in harmony with divine law, just like Ausar was teaching Afro-Kaini by example how to live in harmony with divine law. Auset teaches you how to maintain that harmony. And that has to do with the ritual, the maintenance of that. And you even see when Ausar dies and so forth, and Auset perpetuates and maintains the culture and so forth. So just like once the sperm cell penetrates, then she maintains that fusion. So then the god Set, Ntorou Set, the brother of Ausar and Auset. Set is a spirit force in creation whose energy operates through the star system called Meskheti, the Great Bear. On the planetary side, the planet Mercury. On Earth, the deserts or the red, hot lands of Earth. In your body, Set operates through the nervous system and gonads, which are the testes of the male and ovaries of the female, for the nervous system, the World Wide Web in the body, and so forth. In your spirit, Set's energy governs your desire. Desire can be for that which is in harmony with divine law, yet desire can also be misguided, making that which is disharmonious seem attractive. When that life force energy is moving through your nervous system and gonads, natural desires, if it's 100 degrees outside, you're sweating, and you're losing water, you have a natural desire for cool water to take it in so you can replenish the water that you lost. But if you start lusting after vodka or beer or things like that, that's not a natural desire. That's something that was imputed within you. And if you move forward with that, you begin to, degenerate your organs and your liver and everything else. So your desire can become misguided, and misguided desire is lust. Not a desire for what's in harmony with order, but a desire for something else. When that life force, even just electromagnetic energy, is moving through your nervous system, it generates, electromagnetic field, which is magnetism, which manifests on a mundane level as magnetism or desire. So in Afuraka, the great spirit directed, which is Ra and Ra'at, the great one, creatress, the great spirit, the great Ba, the great Ba'at, the great spirit, directed Ausar and Auset to operate amongst the population of Afurakanu, Afuraikaidu, and guide our spirits to living in harmony with divine law and how to maintain the life of harmony. Ausar and Auset became king and queen in Afuraka, Africa. As Afurakanu, Afuraikaidu, and Kamit and Knesset, meaning Kemet, Egypt and Nubia, Knesset is another name for Nubia, lived under the government of the king Ausar and the queen Auset. We learned the divine balance of male and female. Ausar and Auset instructed us in spiritual cultivation, as well as the cultivation of the land. We began to apply what we learned under the guidance of Ausar and Auset, and we built great civilizations around the world reflecting the divine harmony of creation. Our culture is a reflection of the divine balance of male and female, Ausar and Auset in all things. We talk about these divine dynasties. You look in, for example, the Turin Papyrus, and they talk about the divine dynasties, the rule of the deities. And let's look at that real quick. Of course, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room. If you have any issues seeing anything, just let me know in the chat room also. Okay, so we're gonna pull this up right quick. And just give me 1 second. I wanted to wanted to find one of them that just actually lists the names and so forth. So let me see. And again, if you have any questions, let me know while I'm pulling this up. Whether it's from what we just went over or the information from last week. And you can find, if you look at Turin Papyrus, Turin, you can find a number of different sites talking about it, but I just want to, many of them don't talk about the names of the divinities. They'll just say the divine dynasty or the rule of the gods and so forth. So we just want to see if they put that out there. Okay, so I might have to just pull that up a little bit later, but just to show you the actual papyrus. So if you look at the Turin Papyrus King's List with a royal canon and so forth, this is what it is. And here's the link in the chat room. All right. So you have the Turin Papyrus. And as you can see in column 1, it lists the gods of ancient Egypt and so forth. Column 2, gods of ancient Egypt, spirits and mythical kings. And then column 3, it starts with the human dynasties and so forth. So, and in this particular list, they start down with Minna, and then Aha, or Yao, actually Heru, Yao, and so forth, and Jed and Jed, and the different human kings and so forth. But at first, you'll find Ptah and, Shu and Geb and Ausar and Set and Heru and Tahuti and so forth, the different divinities ruling. Now, when we're talking about the rule of the divinities in ancient Kamit, and some people ask us, oh, well, was it at one time the deities were just walking around on earth and then, they became spirits, or were they just ancestors? A lot of people put forth this foolish notion that Ra was just the great ancestor, or Inyame originally was the great ancestor, or Nkulu in the, Zulu tradition was the great ancestor. You have white, anthropologists putting forth that idiotic notion. And then you have brainwashed Negroes who are either on the continent, becoming academics, pushing that notion, or brainwashed Negroes over here in the Western Hemisphere who are inclined towards atheism, and they want to pretend like, that's all our people were talking about, or it was just a myth to talk about the unfolding of society, because they really don't know what's going on. So when we talk about the rule of the divinities, we're talking about spirit possession. If you've ever been in a ritual and you've seen someone possessed by an abosom and orisha voodoo, once the spirit enters the body, it's akin, as we always say, to you driving a car, someone gets in the car, you get in the back seat, they take control of the wheel, and they take the car in whatever direction they're going. Now, it's two people in the same vessel, but you are no longer in the driver's seat, but you can see what's going on. And the same thing is happening when an abosom orisha voodoo possesses you, gets inside of your body. They are at the driver's seat, you're in the back. There are two entities in the vehicle. They use your body and communicate with the people in the, in the ritual or wherever you are, heal, protect, teach, and so forth. And then the spirit leaves, just like the person getting out of the car, and you get back in the front seat and you start driving your own vessel or vehicle once again. So that's spirit possession. When the spirit possesses somebody, just like Ausar possessing somebody who is called Obatala in Yoruba, and Agwuisi in Igbo, and Dangbe in Vodun, and Awusi in Akan, when that divinity possesses and is operating through the person, and then someone comes and asks a question, they're not asking the person that's in the back seat, they're asking the driver. Just like if you got in the back seat and somebody else was driving and they pulled up at the drive-through, ordered something, went to the window, and the person in the window asks them for money, they're not looking in the back seat asking you for money, they're asking the person that is driving the vehicle at the moment for money. And that person communicates. So there's an interaction going on between those two, and you're in the back seat. You may even be asleep in the back seat. So whoever's ruling the vehicle, the person who's asking the question, they're the ones who they're speaking to. And it's the same thing when someone gets possessed. When they go and speak and somebody in the community comes up to the person who's possessed, they're communicating with the divinity who's running the vehicle or driving the vehicle, and your spirit is in the background or the back seat, either watching what's going on or sometimes asleep to what's going on and so forth, but that's what's happening. So when we're talking about the rule of the divinities, we're talking about spirit possession, spirit communication. And we invoke the divinity or divine with the divinity. They show us, this is how you should establish culture. This is how you should establish this form of government. This is how you go out into the forest, go out into the woods, this plant, this herb, this mineral, and so forth. This is what will heal people. This is how you cultivate it. This is what you do with the land. This is how you make sure you don't, deplete the soil and so forth. The spirits that animate plant life, animal life, mineral life, and so forth, they will show you what's going on. When we're asking questions about the best way to structure our communities and so forth, and about marriage and child rearing and what we need to do, the divinities are showing us through spirit possession, spirit communication. Just like we still have today, a spirit of possess and say, no, you go get this plant. This person is sick with that. You go get this plant, and they'll go show you, pick it themselves and make the medicine. You look at that and then you do the same thing. They just showed you how to make medicine to heal a specific disease. You just learned directly from the divinity. You weren't learning from the person, you're learning from the divinity, the abosa, the rule of the deities. When that first began to happen with regard to us deciding we're going to structure our society like that, that's the rule of the divinities. And when we learn the different things that they taught through spirit possession, spirit communication, and began to implement those things, okay, you told us we need to do this, okay, we go ahead and do it. We should structure our village with certain buildings in these different areas that represent the different organs within the body. Okay, we go and build them and do everything they said we're going to do, and we start living like that to see how it operates. And once we have these structures and these protocols and so forth, then we have human kings and queen mothers that take rule, heads of matriarch clans and so forth, and they follow the blueprint that was laid down by the divinities when they were possessing and so forth. And periodically the deities will come back and possess at rituals, festivals and different things to replenish that knowledge on a regular basis throughout the course of the year. But then you have the human kings and queen mothers that are ruling and following that blueprint. But it starts off with the rule of the divinities. Once again, the whites in our spring don't know anything about that. So they're writing silly little treatises on what does it mean with regard to the rule of the deities. You have Black people, pseudo scholars who believe they're scholars and linguists, misinforming people, not knowing what they're talking about, and basically repeating the idiocy of the whites in our spring. We're trying to force this notion that we were actually atheistic and we were just utilizing mythology, and the God was really the oldest ancestor who became deified later. Pure stupidity. Ever you hear some fool talking about we just deified an ancestor and originally that's the great God you'll see white people writing that there was no God, there was just the great ancestor. And we just deified the great ancestor and made that person a mythological figure later on, and people forgot. Pure idiocy. So when you hear a Black person, a pseudo scholar, a pseudo linguist, a person promoting themselves as an expert, writing books and making videos and movies, or calling themselves priests and priestesses, they don't know what they're talking about. They're just as misinformed as the whites in their offspring. So that's the rule of the divinities. Okay, so there's a question in the chat room. Hede Seshta is also a title of Heru, and he's operating as that, as you saw, one of the functions of him raising Ausar from the dead as a priestly, function. So, and you may have missed earlier, Hede, chief, king, he was above, leader. Seshta, that which is hidden, secret, or sacred, the mysteries, chief of the mysteries. The cognate in Yoruba is Baba, Lawo, which is Baba, the father, Awo, of the mysteries, the high priest, and so forth. The kings and chiefs in ancient Afro-Kai, as well as in Afro-Kai today, as well as in the Voodoo tradition, and so forth in North America, the kings and chiefs are the high priests, as well as the queen mothers, the high priestess in the nation. They go beyond Akan kings, Ahini go into the quote unquote room, the Akongwa Fie, the home or the house Fie of the Akongwa, of the thrones, so-called stools, but thrones of the past, Ahini, going back hundreds of years. Those thrones that they used to sit upon, they go in on Awusi Adai, Kwesi Adai, and so forth. Yesterday was an Awusi Adai, an ancestral observance that happens every 6 weeks, every 6 Awusi, every 6 Sunday. They go into the throne room, so-called stool room, but the throne room, make sacrifices, pour libation, and communicate with the spirits of all of the past kings that sat on those thrones, to communicate with them, to get guidance from them for the direction of the nation. They do that as the high priest of the nation. So, and the same thing with the Queen Mother, the high priestess of the nation. And so that's across the board. Yes, so and that's why you'll see, for example, in Yoruba, Shango, the patron Orisha of kings. Shango is Heru in the Yoruba tradition. So, or Hebioso, is the patron divinity of kings in Vodun. That is Heru. Yao, patron divinity of kings in Akan. That's Heru, and so forth in Akan tradition. So you'll find it across the board that Heru has always been the patron divinity of kings. And you have different forms of Het Heru, queen, as well as, queen mother, Auset, and so forth. You have that as well. Okay. So those are the roles of the different divinities, Ausar, Auset, Heru, and Set. And the rule of the divine dynasties and so forth, divine kings, we had to clarify that. Now, so our culture is a reflection of Ausar and Auset, the divine balance of male and female in all things. We followed that culture that they laid down, began to, establish that culture. Now we get to the next part of the story. It says, yet the god Set desired to govern Kamit himself in place of the god Ausar. Set therefore plotted and killed Ausar, disposed of his body in the river, took over the rule of Kamit, and began a tyrannical, disharmonious government rooted in misguided desire, disorder, lust. After the murder of Ausar, the goddess Auset was forced out of her role as queen of Kamit. She searched tirelessly for the body of her husband Ausar, that he may be given a proper burial. When she found the body of her husband, Auset performed ritual. She began to invoke the spirit of Ausar from his existence in the ancestral realm. Now, when we talk about the cosmology of creation, we talk about Atem and Asasi Nefer Hetep. They give birth to Shu and Tefnut, which is expansion, fire, and contraction, water and so forth, and they give birth to Geb and Nut, which is the earth's crust and the sky. And then Geb and Nut, the earth's crust and sky, give birth to Ausar, Auset, Set, and Nebuchadnezzar. Black earth, river waters, red earth, rain waters. And then, of course, Ausar and Auset give birth to Heru and so forth. So these are the spirits that are operating, as creation is unfolding. But here you have a story of Ausar and Auset, these forces in creation being directed to regulate order in creation and teach us how to live and so forth. Then you get to a part of the story we're talking about Set, desire to govern Kamit himself. Remember, Set governing desire and so forth, which can be guided or it could be misguided. In place of the god Ausar, he wanted to rule, so Set plotted and killed Ausar, disposed of his body, took over the rule of Kamit, began a tyrannical, disharmonious government rooted in misguided desire, disorder, and lust. And then Set went to find the body of Ausar, and she found his body and performed ritual on his body and united her spirit with his. Now, when we get into this aspect of the story about these different divinities and the quote-unquote human aspect of the story, and people can feel the human aspect, where someone is jealous, they kill their brother, take over the country, ruling, the sister leaves, and all of these different things. Well, there's a difference between the divinities, the forces in nature, and the way they operate. Black earth, river water, red earth, rain water, these various things. And then people who have these divinities that govern their head. So for example, my Kradin, my soul's name is Kwesi, because I was born on Awusida, or Akwesida, the day, the da of Akwesi or Awusi, Ausar. So my Kradin, my soul's name is Kwesi, which is Kwa Asi or Kwa Awusi, the subject or servant of Kwa Asi, the divinity Asi or Awusi, Ausar. So I have that divinity governing my Kra, my soul, my head, my spiritual head. Somebody else could be born on Awukuda Wednesday, and they have Awuku or Set governing their head. A woman could be born on Monday and born on Joda, Ajuada, and have Ajua governing her head. Now, these are human beings that have the divinities governing their head, meaning we have that inner divinity's energy that we are to bring into the world. But as human beings, sometimes we don't live in harmony with the divinity that governs our head. Sometimes someone born under the governance of Ausar doesn't live under the, in harmony with that force, and we make mistakes, and then we have to engage in ritual to get back on track. Some people are born on Wednesday. They're called Kweku in our Khan tradition. They're a child of, Awuku, Anansi, or Set, Kweku, Anansi, and so forth. In Yoruba, that means they will be a child of Elegba or Eshu, Elegba, and so forth. That's the one that governs their head, their Ori, their spiritual head, Ori Inus, inner spiritual head. Or their Kra, the inner spiritual head, the soul, the divine consciousness. That's called an Akan. But if they live out of harmony with the divinity, Eshu or Awuku, Anansi, as it's called in Akan, then instead of using their desire for things that are in harmony with order, they go against Eshu, go against Set, Anansi, and their desire becomes misguided, which means lustful. And then they operate off of misguided desire. And when you see the story here, it's not talking about the deities killing each other and all of that. It's talking, when you feel the human aspect of it, it's talking about the rule of the kings, human kings and so forth, and queen mothers and so forth. The ones who were crowned with Ausar, crowned with Auset, with Set, Nebuchadnezzar, Heru, and so forth, these different Aboso, Mauritia, and so forth. Ones who got out of harmony with order and started acting that out, then these are the kind of stories. The first time that there was a king and queen mother in ancient Khanate and Kamit, one's head is governed by Ausar, one's head is governed by Auset. Then they have a brother, his head is governed by Set. And then he kills his brother, whose head is governed by the deity Ausar. And then he takes over. That happened in ancient Khanate and Kamit. It has happened since then. There have been kings and queen mothers in our Khan tradition and Yoruba and everywhere else all around the continent, where at some point over the past few thousand years, even over the past 100 years, one brother who, was a royal, but he was not the king because his brother became the king, He had his brother killed. He took over the throne and started running the country like a tyrant. That has happened numerous times. And then the rightful heir to the throne eventually wages war, stages a coup, overthrows them, and restores the kingdom of the father and the rightful heirs and so forth. That happened in ancient Kamit and Kemet. That happened in Kemet, you know, thousands of years later during the time of the Khensu or the Nubian dynasty and so forth. The true heirs to the throne overthrew the ones who were, you know, controlling in a negative fashion and so forth, and re-established order in Kemet. So that has happened numerous times in human truthstory, our Afrikani human truthstory. We're not talking about the deities killing each other, but this part of the story, so you know the difference between here, Set is not going around killing deities. Deities aren't killing each other. It's talking about people who are governed by Set, but out of harmony with order, because the deities don't operate out of harmony with order. So we need to know that as the subtext when we're reading through. So, and then we'll give the even further gloss later on to give the details. So, when we say Set killed Ausar, disposed of his body in the river, took over the rule of Kamit, began a tyrannical, disharmonious government rooted in misguided desire, disorder, lust. After the murder of Ausar, Auset was forced out of her role as queen of Kemet. She searched tirelessly for the body of her husband Ausar that he may be given a proper burial, karast, and so forth. When she found the body, and of course, he Set threw his body in the river. Auset governs the river and so forth. But when she found the body of her husband, Auset performed ritual. She began to invoke the spirit of Ausar from his existence in the ancestral realm. This is spirit communication. Through ritual, Auset communicated with her husband, spirit communication, and was drawn to a spirit through their divine spiritual union. Auset became pregnant because of her devotion to her husband. Auset was referred to under the title Merit, which means beloved. In the language of Kemet, she was called the Merit, Ausar, beloved of Ausar. The whites corrupted this name Merit into Mary. Okay. Merit into Mary, and gave it to their fictional white female character. The union of the spirit of the god Ausar with Auset, which resulted in Auset becoming pregnant with her son, Khensu Heru, was corrupted by the whites into the immaculate conception and virgin birth by a fictional white character named Mary, who will give birth to a fictional white boy, Jesus or Jesus, whose father was God. And then there's a section, Set was informed by the god Tahuti that the son she was carrying in her womb would grow to be strong. He would defeat and remove Set from power and reestablish divine law and order. As divine heir to the throne, the son of the god Ausar would restore the divine government of his father. Set was directed to give birth to her son and raise him away from the seat of power of the government, because Set had declared that all male children would be killed. Set knew that the son of the god Ausar was going to be born. He knew that the son of Ausar was the rightful heir to the throne, who would challenge the evil government of his father, or evil government, and abolish it to restore his father's kingdom or empire and so forth. Set thus sought to kill the child as soon as he was born. However, Auset followed the directions of Tahuti. She gave birth to Khensu Heru and hid away in the swamps of northern Kemet. So this whole episode of Auset learning from the divinity of wisdom, you're going to give birth to a child, Heru. He's going to grow up. He's going to overthrow Set and restore the, nation, the kingdom of Ausar and queendom of Auset and so forth. And she went into northern Kemet to have the baby in northern Kemet and so forth. That whole story, and then Set ordering that all male babies would be killed because he knew that the son of Ausar would be born and that would be the end of his rule and so forth. Of course, that whole story of Herod, the evil king, ordering that all the firstborn males be killed and so forth. The angel coming to tell Mary that she's going to give birth to the, son of God and all that. That whole story, which can be found in the Metronic, so-called Metronic Stele, or the Sorrows of Auset. We're going to get into that next week. That whole story is, stolen here from this cosmology in H. Kamit. Now, the next part of the phase of the cycle is Set eventually found that Heru had been born. He found out where Heru was and had him killed. One of Set's associates stabbed Heru. When Auset found that her son Heru had been killed, she went to embrace the deceased body of her son and lamented. Her sister, the goddess Nefer Hetep, also lamented with her. So Heru does get killed. Auset, as well as Nefer Hetep, they find the dead body of the son Heru, and they begin to lament. And that's Nefer Hetep. And we're gonna get into that portion because it's almost 10 o'clock now. We're gonna get into that portion next week because this Jesus portion is a 2-week piece, and even in the KUKUU-TUNTUM, it's 2 different sections. But so far, we're dealing with that, dealing with the story, and let's just so you can see this before we go there. Just so you can see the Merit portion. So this, once again, is the Hieroglyphic Dictionary, Volume 1. And just so you can see the corroboration for what we're talking about. So you have mer, to love, desire, to wish for, to crave for, to will. In Coptic, it becomes meh. Mer, lovely, amiable. Mer, love, desire. Mert, love, desire, wish, something, love, long to wish for. And let me pull this up over here. And then plural mediu, those who love, lovers, friends. And then you have meruti, but in Coptic, you'll see it's M-E-R-I-T, merit, beloved. And meri here, lover, a loved one, something loved. Meriti, beloved. And then you'll have a number of, so meri, mer and meri, beloved one, a title of several gods. And even with Ausar, with the male version meri, female version merit, he's the beloved one, like, you know, our dearly beloved departed and so forth, the beloved, the deceased and so forth. You have a number of different, so that's simply a title. Male version, meri, female version, merit. And you even have the 2 female divinities of the quote unquote inundation of the river. Merit, the goddess of the inundation, Meriti, the 2 goddesses, Merit, Meh, Merit of the north, Merit, Shema, Merit of the south. And sometimes you'll see Nefer Hetep and Auset in the place of Merit of the north and Merit of the south, the two Marys. And we're going to get into the two Marys next week. The two Marys who are crying at the, grave of the Khensu and so forth. That's Merit, Meh, and Merit, Shema, the two Marys in this context dealing with Auset and Nefer Hetep and so forth. And just so you can see an image of that. In our book, Afuraka, The Origin of the Term Africa. In this Khensu most, this is, they're pouring water around the primordial mound. This is Merit of the north. This says Met of the north and Reset of the south. The water divinities, Merit of the north and Merit of the south. These are the two Marys, but sometimes Auset and Nefer Hetep will be placed in the role of the two Marys. So when we look at the Sorrows of Auset, the so-called metronymic stelae next week, you see that the two Marys are at the, place of death, burial of the quote unquote Son of God and so forth, weeping and so forth. And then the angel comes down from heaven, which is Tahuti coming down from the boat of Ra to say, Marys or Mary, don't you weep. And Heru is resurrected. So that whole resurrection scene with the two Marys at the, at the grave and so forth, and the angel Gabriel coming down, they stole the whole thing. But we're going to get into that next week. In some detail, we need to get through with that etymology first of Khensu and Here Seshta and who the real deities are and the divine dynasties, and clearing up that whole notion we're talking about. And we're going to get into this notion of the, black soil, Ausar, Kam-Ur, the great black one, and the river waters Auset. When the river waters and black soil come together, then the green shoots pop up, and the Seshen plant, the lotus plant, pops up, and then Heru, the solar energy, rises up out of the plant. That's the union of Ausar and Auset. When that river water came over the black earth, when the deceased one, the black earth, was deposited on the banks of the river and so forth, the body of Ausar ended up on the banks of the river, the dead body of Ausar, and the river water comes over the black soil, and there's a fusion of the black soil and river water, and then there's the crops that spring up. That's the fusion of Ausar and Auset, operating through nature and the birth of Heru within nature. And we'll show it on different levels. So we cleared that information up because some people are misconstruing who the deities are, what their functions are, if they were just people walking around with names of deities and then we deified them, all that kind of nonsense. And a lot of people are misinformed. Even some Yoruba people, Akan people who don't understand cosmology, they started talking nonsense about, well, the Orisha were walking around, they were fighting, but, our goal in life is to become Orisha, which is totally inaccurate. We are not deities. We're not Abosom. We're not Orisha. We're not Vodou. We are Onipa, plural, Onipa, singular human beings. Human beings have a role in creation. Plant life has a role in creation. Animal life has a role in creation. Mineral life has a role in creation. The Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, they have their own role in creation. Only brainwashed Black people who think that being human beings are inferior because white people taught us that we're inferior. We're like, well, we want to be gods and goddesses. We can't just be human beings because that's inferior. We've been so brainwashed with that foolishness. We just want to be gods and goddesses because we think that makes us somebody. Denigrating the role, the sacred role that the Afurakani human being has in creation. So we'll neglect that to try to be a god or goddess to make ourselves feel better, even though we know we're not gods and goddesses, which is, psycho, really. All right, but we learned that from the enemy. So, but we're going to clear all of that up next week and finish up the whole Khensu Heru piece next week. Okay, so we did send out the KUKUU-TUNTUM week 2 yesterday. So that you should have that in your email. So you have the, the broadcast. So if you didn't receive that email, just, send me an email, let me know. I'll send it out. But you should have all of the courses, all of the previous weeks right now. And if you're in another course, we sent them all out. We uploaded everything. We sent everything out. So if you don't have one of them, just let me know. And also, for those who are unaware, we just posted this. This is a brand new. This one is a brand new course that's going to start this week. We just finished up the Hemu Senu 42 Divinities. But this course, the OP course on ritual celibacy and cyclical fasting for alignment. So we're talking about this nature of, when people talk about fasting and praying and celibacy and so forth, that's part of the priestly tradition, priesthood tradition, not only in ancient Kamit and Kamit, but in all over the continent, and then into the hoodoo tradition, juju tradition, voodoo, and so forth in North America. We've always engaged these ritual processes within defined cycles to regulate our own spiritual power, to make ourselves more receptive, and so forth. And it's not only for priests and priestesses and diviners, but also for our people as adults at specific times of our lives in defined cycles and so forth, for us to gain control of our hunger drive, sex drive, and therefore once we can control those major drives of life, then we can regulate and master our own spiritual power so we can execute our function in the world without creating a great deal of disorder. Notice that we have numerous organizations that develop. We have, educational institutions and nation building institutions and all kinds of things. And if you look over the true history of many of these organizations, some of them doing great work and moving forward and building upon the work they're doing and educating the community, and then they fall apart. And after doing all of this great work for a number of years and looking like they're moving in the right direction, because some fool can't control their sexual appetite, then it creates disorder and dissension and discordance within the entire organization, and everything falls apart and people split up just because some fools can't control themselves. And on the physical side, with regard to diet, we'll be putting in great work and doing different things, and then we end up dying early or suffering from all kinds of diseases because we can't control or haven't learned how to control or properly regulate our own diet and therefore our own health. We can't control our lusts or haven't learned that yet, misguided desire and so forth. So the two drives that keep us alive day to day, the hunger drive and alive through successive generations and incarnations, the procreative drive or the sex drive, those things that keep us alive daily and intergenerationally. If we can't regulate that properly, we can't regulate anything. You can't have nation building. You can't even control the basic drives of life if they're being distorted. And the whites in our spring are consistently trying to, control us through the sexual appetite with all the kinds of songs, imagery, movies, books, education, everything. They're always pushing dissexuality, some perversion of sexuality, promiscuity, insanity with regard to the procreative drive and so forth. And they're also polluting the food, getting us addicted to sugar and salt and everything else, all the things that would destroy us and keep us drugged up. These foods, the way they are manufactured, are in the form of narcotics, keeping us hooked, eventually, dying early from diseases that we never should have even developed. So we need to get on that. We can't talk about nation building without understanding ritual celibacy and cyclical fasting for alignment. So if you want to sign up for that course, of course, you can see that. That starts this Yauda Thursday coming up. Brand new course. We've never taught that course before. So, okay, so we're going to end it here. Yet I'll say everybody for joining in. We'll be sending out this upload in the next day or two. And Yabesha Bio, we will meet again.